We want body intelligence rather than mind intelligence, because we have a lot of mind intelligence. Our rational way of being way outweighs that what functions here at the level of supreme intuition. And intuition it's a deep connection to the body. It's a deepest connection to the body. What you will rely on is what the body begins to tell you, not how the mind will interpret that. So this body intelligence is a kind of thing that all of us need to develop sooner or later, because this is where consciousness would reside in the end.
I want to understand, how does experiencing spanda or the quiver or the pulse during meditation or during the unfoldment, like what role does it play? And the context is that like my journey with Kashmir Shaivism started with a very spontaneous and random Shaktipat from someone. I didn't even know that it was supposed to be like a Shaktipat. There was no context before or after, and I remember I was just invited for the meditation, sat for the meditation. I just got up because I had to go somewhere, so I was like, thank you, and I just left. But that meditation was like, it was very powerful. And what I felt during the meditation was, which I didn't have the vocabulary back then, but it's just these waves of pulsating energy hitting me with such intensity that I felt like I couldn't even, sit. And then that kind of, after that, I knew that something changed from that point onwards, but I could never sort of, I tried a lot after that to like just sit and meditate, to close my eyes and, but never even came close to experiencing that. But it made one thing very clear, that that's what I really wanted. Right? For me, everything else felt like a waste of time. Like for the first time in my life, even listening to music felt like I'm just listening to noises. I could rather use the time for... and then I attended the Warsaw workshop. And once I went back, the same thing started again, where the moment I would get into meditation, or even beyond that, even like say while I'm working or grocery shopping, the same, like the pulsations would just start and it would be so distinct. And then after a few months that continued, and then finally Kriya started, because I was very excited after the workshop. As soon as the Kriya started, the pulsations sort of started to transition out. And most of the pulsations were either like in the entire body or specifically between the eyebrows. And then those subsided, and then for 6 to 9 months it was just kriyas, a specific type of kriyas, but they just kept happening. And before coming to this workshop, I went through the course of seeing through the heart. And one of the visualizations that were there around the flower opening in the heart, I just remember like I was also having kriyas while listening to that guided meditation. And just at the point when you said in the meditation that, just go deeper into the center of the flower, and that's what your true nature is. And then again, all the kriyas subsided, and then I started feeling this like pulsation in the heart, which has been there since then. Like even all these days, when I'm sitting for meditation, even before any kriyas begin, it's the pulsation first. And then I almost feel like it's a hide and seek between the kriyas and the quivering. The moment quivering stops, the kriyas take over, and so on. So I was just curious at a knowledge level to understand what's happening, but also, is there any specific guidance or tweaks that I can make to the meditation or my sadhana that would sort of, help the process a bit more.
Just to maybe quench your curiosity and to reassure you that you don't need to do much right now in terms of worrying how to and what to do about your sadhana and how to, because there's nothing that needs to be improved now, because there is this already this movement, pranic movement, and so the best is to simply give this to regularity so that you can now really experience that unfoldment of all the pranic currents, so that there's purification of the subtle body, so that samskaras are purged out, right? The pranic sheath that prior to that there was no access, right? You're aware of this, right? Panchakoshas, we don't have access to that because that connection between what made of cells, right? The food we eat, the Annamaya Kosha and the Manomaya Kosha, and then Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, it's all connected through the pranic sheath. And in that lay language, in an average human being in whom everything seems to be functioning as it should, but there's not much pranic activity, there's no access. So what happens now is that with the activation of pranic current, the activation of pranic sheath begins to now take place, and that brings the very different quality of intelligence, very different quality in terms of what we speak of as even what can be conveyed in language and symbols, because it's directly experienced. When prana coalesces through the body, right? You try to write it down, it becomes clinical, right? It becomes like a Xerox, right? You remember the times when the print was, you could choose which printing, and the cheapest was Xerox, right? It runs through the printer, and it's all like, that's the attempt at explaining these experiences in Tantra and Yoga. There's a whole language, specific language, which talks about the somatic nature of that when prana is awakened. Right? All these various bits. I'm mentioning this as a general interest for everyone, as we build this a little bit, and that tremendous importance is given to the sense of touch. Funny enough, in Shaivism, more than in any classical systems of yoga, to begin with, sparsha, the sense of touch, is considered to be locating in a higher domain, in a higher realm than all other senses. So, out of all the five senses, sense of touch is considered to be superior, and it is through the sense of touch that the visceral, tactile, somatic experience of all these taking place through the body. So just experience all that, see? And with that, there's a birth of new kind of intelligence. If prior to that, intelligence was primarily concentrated around mental activity, and because of that weak connection, see, prana was performing its job, but the body was considered to be hungry, feed, okay, need fresh air, go for a walk, tired, sleep, right? Body had this. And then if you read some literature, if you read that, the further kind of degradation of the body, right? The body is not important, you're not the body, neti. And here is totally the opposite. We want body intelligence rather than mind intelligence. Because we have a lot of mind intelligence. Our rational way of being way outweighs that what functions here at the level of supreme intuition. And intuition it's a deep connection to the body. It's the deepest connection to the body. So therefore what I'm saying is there's nothing to tweak. You're sitting here and I've been observing what you are going through, at least on the outside, and as a process completely, and you just give yourself to the process. Give yourself to the process until you are at the threshold, like where it is, because the process most likely will take you to the next phase of unfoldment, and what you will rely on is what the body begins to tell you, not how the mind will interpret that. So this body intelligence is a kind of thing that all of us need to develop sooner or later, because this is where consciousness would reside in the end. Not that it will reside in the body. It already resides in the body, as it were, in that kind of limitation of the language. But the body itself undergoes this expansion of prana. The light body expands. This whole crystal palace is being rebuilt. So it can contain vast amount of pranic energy that prior to that was just wishful thinking, impossible. So this is in response to you uncovering some potential inquiries and touching upon the importance of really here displaying the discrimination of the possibilities of falling into the loop in Kriya display, so that we don't exhaust endocrine system through the loss of prana. Because a lot of prana is being also lost when we go through these processes of shaking the house, and all this major undusting going on, and purging the system. So it's a twofold process. If we don't know yogic language, what yogic language is someone who is already familiar with these internal processes, either through theory or even better, through practice. Then their body is much more, they are much more familiar with their body, much more familiar, like a dancer, much more familiar with their bodies than someone who doesn't know how to scratch the back, which hand to use, Like the dancer knows the body, because the body is the language of the dance, instrumentality through which the dance is performed. So in the one in whom this already, to a degree, they are in more advanced, I would say, position, and more advanced situation, because there would be this internal aha moments, how best to allow that expansion of prana, how best to handle this when things go all over the place, you see, when to let go completely and just roll on that what might unfold, and when to apply effort. Without that, we often, and I've observed that over the years, amongst the sadhakas in whom pranic force is unleashed, there is propensity to actually lose a lot of prana. Of course, a lot of prana is being generated, because that's what it is. There's great activity of prana, but it's also accompanied by great loss of prana. See? If prior to that, loss of prana was on a regular basis through normal pathways and channels of the senses, extensive talking, extensive seeing, consuming, extensive everything, right? Extensive oozing of prana like this, right? The opposite of that is the conversion of prana. Prior to any awakening, there must be realignment of pranic current. Without realignment of pranic current, not only kundalini, the pranic activation is impossible. The pranatana cannot really, the phase of pranatana cannot really kick in. So there has to be this has to be converted back into the center. And it is converted back into the heart. So this is why in majority of cases, there are of course exceptions out of the rule. For example, a shocking experience, some kind of very intense exertion, emotional, for example, or trauma, witnessing something that shakes one to the core. Yes, this could immediately be accompanied by release. Release, and that would facilitate the process. But in majority of cases, there is this conversion of prana taking place, where we suddenly, as you have said, I would rather sit and do something else rather than listening music. I would rather go in, right? We kind of like become less outgoing, we become becoming inward going. This is because of the internal process of internalization of prana, really. But what happens after, if there is not enough understanding, then the propensity would be to, due to the lack of that innate intelligence, perhaps, that hasn't yet been fully formed, fully articulated itself, that can just guide one. Guidance is, this guidance is, it's not the modern term inner guru. That's something else. That inner guru it's a latest stage in the unfoldment. But it is a kind of inner teacher, that kind of a good instructor, a good tutor, who just tells oneself or reassures oneself that this how things ought to be done, and that's how things less likely to be done. How do you know it? You don't. You see? You don't know it at the level of mind. You can only know it internally. I'm going to give a ridiculous example. Like, if you connect it to someone on a heart level, you know how they feel, even if they don't tell you. Isn't it? Simple as that. You know they may put a good face, but you know they're not really feeling well, and so forth. It's like that, but it's relation with regard to oneself. So there's nothing to tweak. Is to continue with the process, and that Spanda experience, or that quiver of that what was happening, what you were experiencing, is that internalization of prana, which gives this greater concentration in the heart, and it feels like that kind of concentrated energy, and maybe feel as that sense that maybe you think that that's what Spanda is, but that's not necessarily so. It doesn't have to be, because that in itself is very, very beneficial for evolution. Without the convergence of prana, there's no process. How can one progress anywhere? So, all is now down to literally generating that, or taking care of that tapas. You see, so that is proverbial. This is like, when there is enough tapas, then sadhana is spontaneous, natural. There's a strength, there is constant advancement, there is reassurance comes, and this tapas is that spiritual ardor. See, this the drive in a good sense. It's not drive to achieve something. It's simply that ardor which makes one burn bright, really, which is a leitmotif of Vedic civilization, really. The concept of ardor is inseparable from the concept of offering.